Hello everyone, this is Jason from Primetime Aquatics. We've got some work to do today in the fish room. I know we've been focused on the gallery for a while now, but the last tank in the gallery depends upon us doing some work behind me with these 75-gallon aquariums. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So I just turned the lights on so the fish are just waking up, but we have to do something with these two 75-gallon aquariums. Well, because that one down there is the 75-gallon I need for the gallery. On the other side right now, what we have is a 60-gallon breeder. So let me explain what we're about to do. Step one, we need to remove all the Mbuna cichlids from this long-time 75-gallon Mbuna tank. They're going to go in a 125 with some other cichlids. Once that tank is completely cleared out and it is cleaned out, we are going to be taking some of the inhabitants of this bottom 75, which I will talk about a little bit later. And a lot of those fish, or at least some of those fish, are going to be moving up here. That also means this top 75 is getting a complete rescape. Once this tank down here is empty, we can move that. We'll actually have to do two things with that aquarium. One, I have to scrape all the paint off the back side. I'm going to paint the front side because the front side has some scratches. And once I've done that, that can move to the gallery. Now, in its place is going to go a 60-gallon breeder. That 60 breeder is actually going to be used for quarantine because we need more quarantine tanks, and a 60 breeder is actually perfect for that when we're bringing in larger volumes of fish or larger fish that need to be quarantined. So that is what is, I hope, is what's going to be happening this weekend. Over the next couple days, I'm going to get both of those 75 gallons situated so that we can eventually work on the last tank in the gallery. So step one in this very noisy fish room, and I promise I will make it not so noisy as we go through this. Step one is get the fish out, get the rocks out, and get this tank emptied and get the sand out of here. All right, so we got the 75-gallon. Actually, we had to take it off. I wasn't planning on it, but I noticed there were some scratches in the front glass, which makes it hard to film those tanks. So I had to pull it off. I had to scrape all the paint off the back side, paint the front side, switch that around. I knew I was going to have to do it down here. Didn't know I was going to have to do it on the top one. Down here, obviously, we've got the fish out. Some of the fish went to the 125 Geophagus tank. That's what I wanted to do. The rest of the fish are in this tote. I talked about how to deal with, basically, when you're moving, rescaping tanks and stuff. Check out that video in the upper right-hand corner. But all the plants and all the fish are in this tote with an air stone. Filter media is in there as well. So the next step is to get that tank out of there. We're going to get the top 75 back on as soon as the paint's dry on the new back of the tank. All right, so we've got the 60 breeder in. Again, it's a quarantine tank. I'm not going to put a lot of stuff in there because potentially anything you put in the aquarium has to come out of the aquarium when you're trying to catch fish before a swap. And I don't want to do that at 4:30 in the morning. So we've just got some, I know it looks gray right now because I literally just set it up, but the gravel is black. It's not gray. It will eventually, everything will kind of chill out and tone down as this tank gets settled in over the next couple days. The sponge filters were the sponge filters that were already in there, so they're fully cycled. We do have fish coming in a couple of days, so there will be some fish in here, so I don't anticipate too many problems there. The rocks were already in the aquarium. You can see some of them are still covered with that red algae. I actually like it, so I'm going to let it be if it survives. It was a little bit dried out. The rocks I just put on the ground. When I've done that in the past, that red algae just kind of dies off, but if it stays, it stays. If it doesn't, whatever, it doesn't really matter. Next thing is we are going to get the top 75, and that is going to be aquascaped. All right, so we got the 75-gallon up on the top part of the stand, so the 60 breeders there, 75-gallon up there. I already added in some black sand. Now it is time to go to work and start getting the rocks and the wood and the aquascaping in. All right, so Joanna, for the first time, made me put plants in the tank by myself. I forgot to record what I was doing in terms of the hardscape. We've got a couple big pieces of wood in here, and I glued some smaller pieces. Yes, I actually glued the wood this time. And we've also got some dragon stone in here as well that just kind of extends from the wood in both the front and the back. I placed the Anubias, some of the stuff that looks a little weird, like, oh, these leaves are sticking out like that. If that doesn't correct itself when we put water in, and I don't think it will, at least not right away, either one or two things is going to happen. One, the leaves will grow towards the light, or if we're impatient and don't want it to look that way, we can cut those two leaves off, and then it won't be sticking right out in front of the tank. But that's where we're at right now. Joanna's going to glue some, so Joanna is still going to glue the Anubias because I don't have patience. and I know that if I mess that up, I'm going to be really not happy. So I'm going to let Joanna do her thing, and then we'll get water in here, get the filters in. All right, so here we go. We have the tank with water in it, fully planted. Thankfully, nothing started floating. All the Anubias stuck, the wood. It was in other tanks at some point in the past, so, and a couple of those pieces are absolutely huge and heavy. So between gluing the smaller pieces to the larger pieces and gluing the Anubias to the wood and making sure we had rocks in there strategically, everything is in place. Next step is get the fish back in. So here is the view of the 75-gallon tank. I wanted to give it a couple days, let the water chill out, get the fish in. It's still a little bit cloudy, but it is probably by the time you're watching this, it is cleared up. But anyway, this is a great tank, and it's the first time I've done the aquascape 100% completely on my own, with the exception of just Joanna gluing some of the plants that I placed. Some of those plants are going to take on a little bit of a different form as they start growing towards the light. So let's talk about this aquarium. Obviously, what's in it is very obvious. We have 4 fancy goldfish. Fun fact, there's actually 5. When I was shooting this video, I still had the tote with some of the fish next to the aquarium. And as I was scooping out the other fish for the other tanks, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's one more goldfish. So if you see future videos, there's going to be a 5th one that's kind of got like a true gold looking form to it, color, and it's really cool. So I wanted to do this because I've had these fish in the fish room now for at least a year and a half or so. I haven't really showed them too much on the channel just because they've been in that bottom 75 with all those plants. You're going to notice a couple of them, the fins are a little bit ragged, and that's because that 75-gallon, I had to throw some other fish in there. And there were some Synodontis cats, which you normally would never mix those fish. But they were in there temporarily, and I think they might have been a little bit rough around feeding time. So that problem obviously will be solved by not having those fish mixed together. But this is a great fish. These guys are just so much fun to watch. And I know goldfish, sometimes they are easily overlooked, but I love it in this aquarium. You hear sometimes that, oh, you know what, you can't keep goldfish in planted tanks, and that's not 100% true. I have found over the last couple years or so, they leave the Anubias alone. Speaking of the plants, that's what we have in this 75-gallon aquarium. It is all Anubias, different types. Don't ask me what different types. I don't know. I just pulled them out of the bottom 75, and that was a catch-all tank for all the other Anubias we had in the fish room. So basically what I did here with this is I started out with some black sand. The sand is nothing special. It's just the stuff that we find at Petco and PetSmart. We usually buy them out because we have to buy 4 or 5 bags at a time. That was what we have for the substrate. It's an inert substrate, which means if you want to put rooted plants in the substrate, you're going to want to add some root tabs. So that's what we did there. The hardscaping is a mix of some rather large pieces of driftwood and some dragonstone, and so I put 2 large pieces of driftwood together, and then I glued 3 smaller pieces up at the top on the left hand side to kind of give it a little bit more height and a little bit more flow from right to left. The dragonstone all around the wood, that's exactly what we used. I thought at first I was going to use some river rock, and it just did not look right. And so I went with the dragonstone. There's a couple different colors here. Like I said, it's all along the front and along the back as well. It might be a little bit hard to see, but on the right-hand side here, you can see there's an overhang with the wood, which I think looks really cool. And then as you get closer to the center, there's actually a big hole in the wood itself where the fish can swim through. In addition to the 5 goldfish we have in this aquarium, there is also a couple bristlenose plecos that are hopefully going to keep all the algae in check, or at least most of the algae in check. So it was a really simple setup. We have goldfish, we have the Anubias, we have just some driftwood and some rocks and some inert black sand. In terms of filtration, right now what you're seeing on this tank is we have a Seachem Tidal 75 on this aquarium. After filming, I did add back the 2 sponge filters. I just didn't want to add the sponge filters while we're looking at this tank when it's aquascape. So I wanted you to see it kind of like how it would be if it wasn't a fish room tank. So I did add the 2 sponge filters back. I think that they are just something, when we've got central air system running through there, I just wanted to make sure I added them. And believe it or not, after I added them, they don't really stand out as much as I thought they were going to. Lights, these are older lights that we had on the other side of the fish room. These are Kessel lights. I've done a full review. I'll put that on the upper right-hand corner. They're very expensive lights. For this particular setup, I want to say for a 75-gallon setup, they ran with the The gooseneck light connectors, close to $750, maybe $800. So again, if you're interested in checking out those lights, I'll put that review up there for you. But what it is going to do is it's going to give us some of that shimmering effect, especially as the water cooled or cleared up a little bit. We got even more of that shimmering effect, which was pretty nice. The tank itself, I don't foresee me adding any additional fish to the aquarium. Again, with goldfish, I think sometimes it's underappreciated just how large of a tank they need. And these fish are going to get larger. They're only, like I said, about 1.5 years old. When we got them, they were smaller than they are now. They're going to continue to grow. So there's a chance maybe I add some other cool water sort of schooling fish that would inhabit most of the middle or top of the tank. But I really like the color. I like the personality that these fish are showing right now. So it might just stay this way. And it's a nice change from the Mbuna tank that we had on this side of the fish room earlier, really throughout the last 7 years, over 7 years, 7.5, 8 years that we've had the fish room up and running on that side. This has always been an Mbuna tank, and it's a big difference now compared to what we had. So I'm pretty excited about that. I'm also really happy to have the 60 breeder right below this aquarium, and now we have the 75-gallon freed up for the gallery, and we will be completing that last tank in the next couple weeks. Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it, and we'll see you in the next one.